Hello guys, today I am going to discuss on the preface to lyrical ballads. In this video, I am not going to read the text, what is there, but I'll explain the parts, okay? So, let's begin our preface to lyrical ballads. The first edition of lyrical ballads was published in 1798 with no preface. Later, in second edition, January 1801, referred to as 1800 edition, a long and detailed preface was added to it. It was greatly expanded in third edition 1802. Okay, here first there was no preface, but later in 1801 in the second edition Wordsworth added a preface to it, a long and detailed preface. Okay, so later in the third edition the preface was greatly expanded. Remember, the preface is only written by William Wordsworth, but the whole lyrical ballads is the collaboration of those two. Okay, lyrical ballad was a collaborative effort. Both William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge was inspired to produce this book of poetry through many intellectual conversations. So the poems by S.T. Coleridge in lyrical ballads were, Coleridge wrote only 5 poems in lyrical ballads, and rest 23 poems are written by William Wordsworth. So, first was the Rhine of Ancient Marine. Okay, the Rhine of R-H-I-N-E. The Rhine of Ancient, see the spelling of Ancient, A-N-C-Y-E-N-T, Ancient Marine. Let's write it here, M-A-R-I-N-E-R-E. Okay. Rhine of Ancient Marinate was the first poem. Second is The Foster Mother's Tale. Third one is The Nightingale, then The Dungeon and Love. These are the 5 poems by S.D. Coleridge. Okay. When Wordsworth got its first lyrical ballads, along with Coleridge, it was violently attacked by the new classical critics. They criticized this work. Okay, they criticized this lyrical ballads, and this was the reason why Wordsworth included a preface to it in its second edition. Okay. This lyrical ballad contains a theory of de facto manifesto. De facto manifesto. What are these things? De facto means something that exists in reality even though they are not recognized by the law. Something that is there, but the law has not recognized it. Okay, it's the meaning of de facto. But what is manifesto? Manifesto is the declaration is declaring publicly the intentions and motives regarding an issue. Okay, it means that manifesto is open declaration. Okay, declaration of something intentionally. Do you understand the meaning of de facto and manifesto? De facto is something that exists but not recognized by law, but manifesto is declaring it intentionally. Few guidelines to manifesto are, there are 4 guidelines here used in lyrical ballads preface. Ordinary life is best subject for poetry. Everyday language is best suited for poetry. Expression of feeling is more important than action and plot. Poetry is the spontaneous overflow of emotions. Okay, these are the 4 guidelines used here. First one is ordinary life is the best subject for poetry. It means here Wordsworth has written about ordinary life and language, which he has chosen as a subject here. Ordinary language is best suited for poetry. Same thing, expression of feeling is more important than action and plot. Means how you are expressing your work in a poem, how you are expressing yourself is more important than the action and plot. Okay, and poetry is the spontaneous overflow of emotion. It is a line said by William Wordsworth, a very famous line, that poetry is a spontaneous overflow of emotions. Poetry, the writers write their emotions in poetry. Okay. Let's move on to what is Wordsworth saying in the preface to lyrical ballads. Wordsworth said that lyrical ballads was published as an experiment. He used common language or simple language for his readers to understand it clearly. The use of common language gave him a sort of pleasure. Wordsworth was using common language. He has used common language here in his poems as He wanted his readers to understand all the words or lines properly, and that gave Wordsworth a sort of pleasure. Okay, first edition was, and this the first edition which Wordsworth, the first edition of Lyrical Ballads, which was written in 1798, the first edition, which contained no preface. Okay, it was violently criticized or severely criticized by the critics, means they were criticizing it. Later Wordsworth wrote a preface. Okay, so later his friends advised him to write a preface attached to Lyrical Ballads explaining his stance or to give a systematic defense to his theories, but Wordsworth was not willing to give a preface, as he thought that his readers might not be able to understand his arguments. Okay, well, later when this work was criticized by the neoclassical critics, his friends, maybe Coleridge, advised him to give a preface to this work explaining his stance or his systematic defense, okay, upon his theories, why he has used common language in his poems. Okay, but Wordsworth was personally not believing, or he did not wanted to give a write a preface to it, as he thought that his readers, maybe they will not be able to understand why he wrote his preface, why he is defeating himself. Okay, so but later Wordsworth thought, and he made he thought that the preface, if he is going to write a preface, the preface has to have a certain limit. He will not extend it. So the preface has to have a certain limit. He was not interested in giving a systematic defense about his poems. Firstly, he thought that his readers would not like it, and secondly, if he would write everything in the preface, it would make a preface lengthier. After much discussions, he was ready to give a preface, but with a limit, explaining why his poems are different from the popular poetry that were prevalent currently. Okay. So later, in the next paragraph, in the preface to Lyrical Ballads, Wordsworth writes that readers or his audience have certain expectations regarding prose and poetry. People expect that poets will gratify certain known habits of association which contains ideas and expressions. By this, he says that people expect, or the readers who will read the poem, they expect that this poet also will contain the same ideas that are prevalent. Okay, but Wordsworth says that he will likely disappoint those people who thinks that his poetry will look and feel the same. Wordsworth then tries to explain the difference. He says a normal or common pattern based on current scenario is used in his poem. That means he is using the ordinary life, okay, the ordinary life for poetry, ordinary language he wrote in the guidelines of manifesto. He is saying that the normal and common pattern based on current scenario is used in his poems. All the popular wins or popular poets that were at that time has some pattern, and he finds it extremely gaudy. Their language is bit difficult and extravagant. So Wordsworth here is saying that he is using a simple language because all the popular wins or all the writers at that time were using a very difficult language which was making readers difficult to understand. Okay, so his language is a very common and simple language which he has used in this poetry. Wordsworth adds imagination to his poems so that ordinary things would appear interesting to people. Okay, imagination is added here in his poems. Wordsworth, okay, in third paragraph, Wordsworth says, okay, this was the second paragraph, but in the third paragraph, Wordsworth says that he feels that people in rural areas speak purified language. Okay, rural people speak purified language. Okay, people in rural areas speak purified language because they are close to nature, unlike the people in urban areas. As Wordsworth is a romantic poet, okay, romantic poet in the sense that love for nature, though he brings nature. He feels that people who are living in village areas, okay, people living in village areas has natural scenario, and the language comes out from the language of day-to-day life. He thinks that those language are pure and simple. Wordsworth regards as pure language as it is the language from nature. He thinks simple language helps to express poetic truth or poetic pleasure. Okay, Many writers use lofty or high-level language, high-style languages, but Wordsworth finds it wrong. He thinks that they do express it clearly or simply, and the poem becomes a bit difficult to understand. Okay. In this video, I'm just gonna discuss these 3 paragraphs. I'll also post another video in which this is the first part of the video of lyrical ballads. In the next video, I'll discuss about more. Okay.